Now, welcome to World Chef's podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar Friedrichsson, and this is World on a Plate. I'm excited to welcome Anna Blue on the show today. Anna is the founder and CEO of Blue Moss Group, where she helps organizations align business strategies and social impact to drive growth. She also is the founder of the Hospitality Creator Summit, a first of its kind platform bringing together hospitality leaders, creators, and brands to shape storytelling and influence in the industry. So I'm very excited about that as well to hear more about her experience within the hospitality industry. Anna's background is in the gender equity. And now with the International Women's Day celebrated on the 8th of March, just went by. Uh, well, Chef, we are highlighting women's stories and leadership across our global community. So I'm very excited to speak with Anne and discuss the topic of women leading in hospitality and how we can all work together towards a more equitable industry. So welcome, Anna, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. A fascinating profile you have. Maybe before we dive deeper into the leadership and equity, which is sort of the topic of today, maybe you
Yeah.
can tell us a bit about your story, your journey, what led you to the hospitality industry and
Yeah.
developing the expertise in gender equity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for having me on today. So, my background is, like you said, it's an interesting profile. I've done a little bit of everything. It feels like I got my start here in the US in politics, did that for a few years, worked on Capitol Hill in the US Senate. I worked on campaigns, the presidential campaign back in 2008 and then decided that the work that I wanted to do needed to have real impact on real human beings in a more personal way. And so I went into nonprofits and working with charities and nonprofits all over the world. I worked with the United Nations Foundation, leading a global gender equity movement to help young women become activists and advocates in their community for other women and girls and just realized that that sparked a passion. And there are so many challenges. Women are 50% of the global population, maybe even 51% at this point, and there is not one place in the entire world where women are equal. And so when you think about it in that term, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so I started to dig into equity in the workplace and a number of things. And then had the opportunity a couple years ago, about 3 years ago now, a little more than 3 years, a good friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this opportunity to lead a foundation that's doing good in the hotel industry and hospitality." And I had no experience in hospitality other than just being a fan of travel and hospitality. And I went through the process and realized that there was a lot of good that can be done in hospitality, fighting human trafficking and working on gender equity and giving access to people who don't know that there is a career path in this industry. And so I joined the industry a couple years ago and have been in love ever since.
Yeah, you're enjoying your being a part of the lifestyle. It's a lifestyle
It
industry,
is a
and
lifestyle industry. Yeah.
as you now have found out, it's a fast-paced and a high-pressure industry. Have you do you have a feeling that is what defines a strong leadership in this kind of environment? Is it different from other industries, you think?
I mean, I think that strong leadership and good leaders, those qualities I believe are the same. I came before hospitality, I was working in the tech sector with all of the biggest tech companies, kind of working on digital safety for children online. And that's a different type of pressure and a different type of pace, I would say. Very different people, not nearly as many conferences as hospitality. But but I think what makes a strong leader is the same no matter what you're doing. It really is about connecting with human beings. It's about how you show up for people. And profits matter. Yes, we everybody wants to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a way to take care of people and make sure that we're doing good and also creating strong leaders and strong business.
Is there any sort of one habit that has personally shaped the way you lead?
Oh, one habit that's shaped how I lead. It goes back to really that connection. You know, when I was leaving the American Hotel and Lodging Association last year, they sort of my team went around and everybody said really wonderful, probably undeserving things about me. And so and the one thing that kept coming up was how I see people for exactly who they are. And it doesn't mean that we show up at work the same way we show up at home. I don't know why people say bring your whole self to work, but there is I think that really understanding who you're working with and who they are as people is what makes me a good leader, I believe.
Mm, mm. And now since we're talking about equity and particularly about women in our industry, do you think is there a common misconception about women in leadership role in general or in our industry?
There are so many. How much time do we have? Um,
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, I love that you have a global platform because I think that that's really important. What gender inequality looks like for women looks very different in everywhere you go, right? There are some places, as I mentioned, there's not one place in the world where women are equal, but that can be more extreme and less extreme depending on where you are in the world. And even here with, the United States is very large, it looks different in different states. Like here, it even looks very different, if I drive 2 hours north versus 2 hours south. And so,
Sure.
um, I think that there is this sense that women leaders become leaders because they're women, not in spite of it. There's not a lot of credit given to all of the hoops that women have to jump through, all of the expectations of women and caregiving and all of those things to understand that by the time women have made it into leadership, they have done a lot more. They have led in a lot more ways. They are far more prepared in so many ways, but there's still this idea of like, oh, they put her there because she's a woman, because they needed a woman to lead, and not because she is actually the most qualified person to do that. And so to have to jump all through all the hoops to get there and then still be questioned once you're in a position of leadership because, oh, did she really deserve that? Or was she just given that opportunity because she's a woman? I think that that's often the misconception is that she doesn't deserve it.
Mm, mm, mm. And so, do you see a lot of disparities, specifically in hospitality or the culinary industry, between the opportunities that arise from men versus women? Is it
Yeah, I mean, when
is
you
this
look at who works in hospitality, whether it's hotels or in culinary and food and beverage, when you see sort of how much of the workforce women make up, how many managers, how many women are running restaurants, opening restaurants, how many women are, leading at the general manager level of hotels. There's all of this opportunity. And then once you really start to look at senior level positions in senior companies, executive chefs, when you look at CEOs of hotel companies, suddenly those numbers go like this. And you
Yeah,
see that
yeah.
that gap, right? So there is a barrier that exists for women, especially in leadership, that we can only make it so far. And then people really start to do look at solely men for certain positions and certain levels of leadership. And so we definitely see it across the board. At home, women still make up, here in the US, it's about 80% of caregiving. And again, that changes depending on where you go. So if you are primarily responsible at home and primarily responsible to take care of others at work, that's also a big disparity for women of having to just do more on a daily basis. But yeah, when, across the board, when we look at almost any industry, but certainly in hospitality, those far senior levels is where you see the greatest gap.
Yeah. I mean, we often, and I guess our industry has to take a deeper look in at themselves, and through the decades, is a very known to be a very male-dominated and sort of a
Yeah.
masculine environment. And maybe our industry is losing out on some qualities. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think there is anything that stands out to you about the way that women in particular lead in hospitality? Do they bring anything different because of their women and different mentality or not necessarily?
I think when you look at leadership qualities in general, it really is a strong balance of having, what they would consider feminine leadership qualities and masculine leadership qualities, right? And I know some incredible male leaders who lean more into feminine leadership qualities, right? And when I say that, it's things like, empathy and compassion and some of those things, the nurturing side that we tend to see as more feminine. And with masculine, you've got risk taking and sort of quick decision making and some of those things. And the best leaders have it all. Like the best leaders truly are the ones who are balanced and can see people and show up for human beings and lead with compassion, which is so important. Empathy is so important, especially today. And at the same time, they, have some of the more traditional leadership qualities that we think that we are looking for in people. And so I would say that for women, but also for men, like truly understanding how to strike that balance. But when you do talk about empathetic leaders, which tends to be a feminine quality, here in hospital on the hotel side, I see this a lot. Some of the most revered current leaders in the hotel industry are certainly people who lead with compassion, who lead with empathy, who, despite the political narrative, still have strong diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. They still want human beings to succeed and be given opportunities maybe they didn't have previously. And I don't think that we should assign a gender to any of that. I think that compassion should be something we all lead with, but that tends to be seen as a weakness or a more feminine quality, which I personally don't think makes a lot of sense because most of the most successful leaders have that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting you say that because yes, in fact, it is a very important quality when you're because when you're dealing with it's a very people-intensive industry,
Absolutely.
especially
Yeah.
yeah, and you have a lot of interaction between both staff and customers, and so yeah, empathy and really those qualities are a part of hospitality. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
so
it's what defines this business, right? It's the
what?
little things. It's
Yeah.
going above and beyond. It's the way that you realize that a guest, in the restaurant or in the hotel needed something a little bit extra. It's making them feel special. Like that, that is what leadership and hospitality should look like.
So I do wonder why. I'm wondering why then women haven't been more promoted into leadership positions. But as you said,
Yeah.
it's not just hospitality; it's maybe across the board.
Yeah.
So in the hospitality industry, I mean, what can the industry, how can the industry better support women today? What other anyone listening to us now that is a
Yeah.
CEO of his restaurant or hotel and is there anything, any actions that you can make
Yeah.
how to better support women in our industry today?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, we tend to hold women to different standards. So if you look at the history of gender equality, especially in the workplace, gender equity in the workplace, there tends to be this focus on fixing women, right? Let's give women more mentors. Let's fix the confidence gap in women. Oh, women have imposter syndrome. Let's fix that. Instead of actually fixing the system that doesn't allow them to advance and get ahead, right? Women don't need more confidence, they actually need more opportunity. And I think that that's something that we really need to think about. When you get into senior leadership, what tends to happen is that people hire people that look like them, think like them, act like them, speak like them. That's just what we gravitate towards, right? Like you oftentimes see somebody hiring somebody because they like the same sports team or because they come from a similar place or they have a similar background. We tend to do that, and that's everybody. But when you have mostly men in positions of power and they are continuously hiring people who feel comfortable, right? That's our bias. Our bias is that we want to feel comfortable. We don't want the unknown person. So my advice is to step outside of that when you're sort of feeling like you're gravitating towards somebody because it feels more comfortable, because you think you'll get along with them better. Like question yourself. Take that moment to say, okay, but who is actually right for this position? Who maybe has the skills that I don't have? Who thinks differently speaks differently, acts differently, talks differently,
Yeah.
because that's well-rounded leadership, right? Like that's what you actually want. You want the person who's going to push back on you. You want the person who comes from a completely different perspective and set of experiences because that makes you better as a senior leader, as a CEO. But we don't tend to do that. We tend to go for what's comfortable. And so I would say in those moments, push yourself outside the box and think about the person who comes from a different set of backgrounds and experiences, regardless of whether that shows up as gender or race or culture or geography or any of those things. It's a really important thing, muscle for all of us to learn to flex as leaders.
Yeah, and so really about focusing on diversity, and we've also had on this podcast about people with special mental
Yeah,
disabilities, and how to include those in a working environment, in a brigade, in a cuisine brigade. So
yeah,
what you're saying is really all type of diversity just brings more spices to the
yeah.
to the dish,
I like
and
it. I like it. Good reference. Yeah.
and
And
so.
there's so much research and data that supports that the more diverse a senior leadership team is, the more profitable the company is, or the entity, like the organization, the more money they make, the lower turnover they have. So like the data supports it. McKinsey puts out a study every single year that supports that diverse senior leadership teams actually lead to more money and more success. And isn't that at the end of the day what you want in business? You want more money and more success, right? And so there's a way to do that that people don't pay enough attention to.
Now that's a very good point, and then yeah, it becomes a part of healthy business, doing business in a healthy way, and
Absolutely.
for the
Yeah.
prosperity of your enterprise.
Mm.
What for young women entering the kitchen or the hospitality sector today? What advice can you give to women, young women entering our industry?
Speak up. I think that women tend to come into places oftentimes and sort of think, well, if I just keep my head down and I just do a good job, then those opportunities will be afforded to me. But unfortunately, that's not how this works. That's not how bias works. And I think that really being clear about um, your work ethic and your intentions and wanting to go to a place and grow and learn and have more opportunities is really important. I would also say to young people coming in to the workforce in general, young women coming in, as I said, the system tends to put the fault on women for not getting ahead. And so I always tell young women, don't buy into that. Don't buy into the narrative that you have to show up differently and more like a man in order to be successful, because then your eye is going to just be taken off the ball. And that's kind of why the system is designed that way. It's designed to distract women and to make women feel responsible for not being paid the same or promoted at the same rate or have the same opportunities. So I would say, don't take your eye off the ball, keep work, always work hard. You can't come in and just expect to be CEO tomorrow, but certainly show up and keep your head up instead of keeping your head down, and have the conversations and talk to people about what it means to get ahead in that restaurant or that hotel or that cruise ship or whatever part of hospitality you work in. Have the conversations and make your intentions known that you're committed, but you want to grow.
Mm. And you've now been working on this subject for quite some time, and building those platforms and movements to shape the future of hospitality. Are you hopeful about the future? Do you think things are going the right direction? Are things getting uh, is the equality equity getting more recognized among leaders today? Is it? Uh, oh, now
That's a
actually.
loaded
Now,
question.
yeah, you're sitting in Washington, D.C. Yeah,
Right. I'm like, how do I answer this?
depends
No,
on the city.
again,
Yeah,
it does depend on where you are in the
where you
world. So
are.
I will
Yeah.
say, coming from a US perspective right now, no, the needle is moving in the wrong direction for the first time in a very long time.
Hmm.
Progress and equity, no matter what you're looking at, is always slow, right? This can take hundreds of years, it can take decades, it can, but now we're seeing it actually reverse. We're seeing important programs go away. We're we're seeing fewer opportunities. There's a university here in the US that does a study specifically to the United States on women in hospitality leadership. And for the first time, the numbers were stagnant. So for the first time over the past 2 years, we didn't see increases in leadership gains. And so overall, I mean, if you look at the big picture, right, like progress again is slow and sometimes it ebbs and flows, and we're in a little bit of that right now. I've been doing this type of work for a very long time, and so I always have to remain hopeful. The day I give up hope is the day that there's no point in showing up and doing this anymore. So, I believe that there are some really, really incredible men and women who want to do the right thing on behalf of human beings. That I've been so fortunate to work with incredible people across the board who want to make this world a better, more equitable place. And so I focus on that. But in a lot of parts of the world right now, things are not progressing and they're not getting better. And whether they're standing still or going backwards, but that is still part of the journey to equality and to equity. And this will continue to be a very long journey, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
good point because you see the political influence also how it trickles down to our industry.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
mm, when you look at thinking of like n next generation of young adults, you look at younger girl today. Are you hopeful? Do you think they will
Yeah.
rise up to the challenge? There is
Yeah. I don't ever like putting um the pressure or the expectation that like we failed, so now it's their job, right? Like we all have to continue to do this work and we all have to be in this fight. However, coming from, leading Girl Up at the United Nations Foundation, working with young women, like 16 to 25-year-olds all over the world in over 100 countries, there is nothing more optimistic to me than this generation of young people who has access to information in a much different way. They have access to build platforms and use their voice in a very different way. I remember, I feel like I've been an activist my whole life, but when I was young, that desire was there, but it was like, oh, when I'm older, I can do this, and when I'm older, I can do that. And now you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait anymore. You can have an opportunity to build a platform and use your voice in so many different ways at such a young age and get involved in causes. And so I think it's all of our responsibility to carry this forward. But when I think about young women, when I think about young people in general, I am very, very hopeful. That is actually what gives me the greatest motivation and joy is to think about Gen Z and Gen Alpha and just their drive to make the world a better place.
And I guess it's not just about the young women and the women, it's also how we educate our young men. I, do, do you? So is that a part
Yes.
of your
Say it
advocacy?
louder. Yes.
And so how can leadership actually have alert
Yeah.
systems for maybe masculine toxic environment in the kitchens?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, you're my hero for saying that. It's absolutely true. I mean, at the end of the day, the people in the majority of positions of power are men, right? So if we don't do this together, then we are constantly just going to be hitting a wall. So equity isn't on the responsibility of women. Women already want that. They're already prepared, right? And so yeah, it is how we think, like I said, if we can just have more men thinking outside the box, more people who have the opportunity to promote or hire, to think about it differently, to not be fearful of somebody who is different or has a different set of experiences or doesn't look and think and act and talk like them. That goes a huge, journey and distance in this fight. And I would say also not just assuming that the way you lead is the best way, right? Like there's just this assumption because men have been leading since the beginning of time that that's the best way to lead. And so we just make that assumption of like, oh, well, he must know, even if she's actually more qualified, he just instinctively must know how to be a better leader, right? Because that's what the world tells us. And so to just check those things, to have that conversation with yourself, to be willing to take a chance to look at the qualifications and all of that stuff in a different lens, I think is so important. But yeah, this isn't, we will never achieve equity in any sense of the word if everybody isn't at the table together.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
Anna, thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
And yes, and I hope it's food for thoughts for many of the leaders out there, and that they are alert of both the question of having diversity in your leadership and maybe alert systems for any toxic behavior that might
Yeah.
might appear, that it can be dealt with properly. And that is, on the bottom line, good for business.
Absolutely. Yes. Doing good can be really good for business. They don't have to be separate. So that's the great news. But thank you. Thank you for having me on. This has been a really great
Thank you,
conversation.
Anna. Yeah, really great to have your insights. And well, we look forward to seeing what's coming next. You have the Hospitality Creators Summit in June. So
You.
so with on this podcast page, we'll put a link to what you're doing, other things that you're doing, so people can follow what your different activities. So the hospitality, just a quick words. The what can people expect from the Hospitality Creators Summit?
Yeah, so we are bringing hospitality, primarily B2B creators who tell the story of the business side of the hospitality industry. And that's across all of travel and tourism. So certainly restaurants, hotels, we've got folks in cruise, we've got folks in like the vegan food industry, which I love. And so we just have a lot of people coming together. And it really is anybody who considers themselves a storyteller. So we're going to bring together the industry's sort of 200 greatest storytellers. It is a free event. It's in San Antonio, Texas, in June, and there's a very short application on our website, thehospitalitycreators.com, and it'll just be an incredible day of inspiration around influence and creating content and telling stories. And I'm so excited to bring folks together.
Excellent. We're looking forward to follow you and participate those who can on the Hospitality Creators Summit. So we'll put a link on our page, as I said, and people can learn more about that. So again, thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast and for your inspiring story and insights.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for listening. You're listening to World on a Plate. I'm your host, Ragnar Fredriksson, and this is World Chef Podcast, World on a Plate. Take care. Bye bye.